Us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline to do his job, among many other things. Trevor Matich with us, ESPN college football insider and friend of the program for another Matich Monday. Trevor, how have you survived the bye week with no BYU game?
Well, just imagining what Jerem would look like with his head shaved. Jerem, if you're not willing to shave your head, Jerem, would you at least be willing to shave your back?
Not again. Not again, Trevor.
I know. One time, when it grows back, I've heard it's really tough.
I did shave my head a few years ago on the show when I said BYU wouldn't beat Gonzaga in Spokane, and they did, and then they did, and then they did.
Listen, Trevor.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you shave your head all 3 times?
No, just the one time.
He learned his lesson.
Yeah, I learned my lesson.
Yeah.
In fact, Dave Rose, the head coach, said, "Don't ever bet against the Cougs."
Yeah, but Spencer, how did he look completely bald? I mean, like just with a smooth waxed dome. How did he look?
Well, he looked like he was from Eastern Europe. We'll just leave it at that.
Eastern Europe.
Trevor, it's Utah State week. Jerem does not have his hair on the line for a win against the Aggies, and that's a good decision. What was BYU-Utah State week like for you as a player?
It was always big. I mean, it was always huge because you could just feel the animus. It's a rivalry game, and I think, Utah is the rivalry game that comes to mind most often, but Utah State was just as big back then, to me anyway, and to us. And for Utah State, we were their Super Bowl as well. So it was big time to play them. And, of course, ask me what it's like to lose to them.
What is it like to lose to them, Trevor?
I have no idea. We were 4-0 against Utah State and 4-0 against Utah, so I just have no idea. But you have to ask somebody else. But the thing is, you don't want to lose to them. And this week, it really takes on a whole nother order of magnitude. Because if BYU loses to Utah State, not only will they have lost to both of their rivals, they will have lost 4 in a row, with Boise State and Mississippi State up next, looking at a 6-game losing streak right in the face. So this isn't just a rivalry game with Utah State. This is it could be a season crusher. To lose to these guys.
Absolutely. And we've been talking about how big this game has become given given the layout of the schedule. And you just laid it out, which is a good point. By the way, if we want to talk about someone losing to Utah State, that's what we have Brian Logan for. But last week, the Aggies put up 61 points against San Jose State. I don't think the Spartans are very good. But Utah State has appeared to be somewhat bipolar in that they have played Power 5 teams, Wisconsin and Wake Forest, and gotten blown out and given up a bunch of points. Then they played Idaho State, your Idaho State Bengals. Don't sleep on them. That's right. That's right. And San Jose State, and they have blown them out. So what do you think of the Aggies so far?
I think the Aggies have done what they were expected to do. I mean, the teams that were, the big teams that they faced, they've struggled. The teams that they were supposed to do well against, they did, even though they had some injuries, which BYU cannot say. The one team, well, actually the 2 teams they were supposed to do well against, Portland State in the opener and then Utah, neither one of those games did they perform up to their standard or their expectation. LSU and Wisconsin are teams of a different order of magnitude, of talent and depth, and BYU just clearly wasn't ready for them. But BYU cannot say what Utah State can say, and that is when they faced a team closer to their own size that they performed well and they won. As a matter of fact, they won in convincing fashion. BYU still has to prove that they can do that.
What BYU team do you expect to show up in Logan, Trevor?
Well, I hope to see a desperate team. I hope to see a team that's playing with their back to the wall, knowing that their season may well be defined by this game. And if that's it. They are rested now. They're rejuvenated. They've had a chance to look back at some of the opportunities that they have missed in the first month of the season, some things they could have done better. They've had a chance to shuffle in some personnel and take care of some issues. But if they don't come out with an absolute fury against Utah State, as if this is the season, this is the Super Bowl, this is it. I don't mean by execution. I mean by just fight, just the fight in them. Then BYU will struggle even to get to 6 wins and go to a bowl game, even though the back half of the season is, it lightens up considerably. So a 6-game losing streak is what they're looking at potentially if they lose this game to Utah State. And I want to see them play like they know it.
I'm interested to see this game for all the reasons you've laid out. Because if BYU wins this game, it changes things. It really does. If BYU loses this game, wow, they're in danger of being 1-6 and needing to win 6 games. Because if you're 6-7, all of a sudden you're not just bowl eligible. The APR comes in academically, and then the NCAA has to weigh in on who gets to go to what bowl. It gets weird. You don't want it to get weird at this point. So BYU could have Bo Hodge at quarterback, depending on if Tanner Mangum's ready to go. No indication BYU's not talking about it. They don't talk about it unless it's season ending with injuries. So if Bo Hodge is the guy, Trevor, what kind of
bitter about that injury thing?
I would love to know more information. I would. As we all would. If Bo Hodge is the guy, this Friday night, and it's a short week, even though coming off a bye week, what do you expect? What kind of progression do you expect from Bo Hodge post-Wisconsin game?
Well, if Bo Hodge is the guy, I think he'll have a better chance to show what he can do. To make your first start against Wisconsin is kind of tough. And I think Utah State, is more BYU size right now. And I would expect Bo Hodge to do better from the pocket, but I would also expect that Ty Detmer would plug in more of the plays from last year that he did for Taysom Hill. Some of those quarterback runs and the run-pass options and the zone reads, and to do more of that than he did with Tanner Mangum this year. I think that ultimately he wants it to be more of a pro style with a little bit of that sprinkled in. But right now you've got to play to the strengths of who you got. And if it's Bo Hodge, we know that Bo Hodge is quite mobile. And you've got to start there because that's the one thing that will travel. Pull the ball down and run. So I would really like to see some more of the old stuff from last year rather than try to shoehorn and force the pro style down their throats right now because the personnel is not getting the job done in the pro style.
ESPN's Trevor Matich with us on BYU Sports Nation, another Matich Monday. The rhetoric would suggest that this is the biggest game of the season. So should we call it the biggest game of the season, Trevor?
It is because it's the game this week. But, again, there's a bit of desperation here. And I think it's fair to say this is the biggest game of the season. If they go up there and right the ship, if they beat Utah State, if the defense covers down on the back end and does a better job against the run, against a team that can run with a running quarterback on defense, if the offense is able to generate some push at the line of scrimmage and get some rhythm on offense, which you really need to have to string together first downs, or else the play caller, in this case Ty Detmer, can't really get anything done if you're going 3 and out too often and if you're 3rd and 8 all the time. All those things, if they can put that together against Utah State, it gets them out of first gear, it gets them some rhythm, and it gives them a little bit of belief. If they lose to Utah State, then what belief is there? And when I say belief, I mean belief that they can get the job done as a team. I mean, you don't want to live on faith all the time. As a football team where we have faith that maybe this stuff will work. And when I say this stuff, what I mean is what we are as a football team, that it could actually have success. You don't want to have that squashed again against Utah State, then face Boise, then go to Mississippi State before coming to play East Carolina, and that's a road trip, for goodness sake. So really getting out of first gear and developing some rhythm, if it doesn't happen in this game, it might be the better part of another month before it does. So this game is massive because of the way the first 4 games have shaken out.
Yeah, psychologically, and I said this a bunch last week, I just don't know how BYU can come home and expect to beat Boise State if they can't go to Logan and beat Utah State.
Just call Bronco and ask him how you do it.
Yeah, how to beat Boise State.
As Virginia just did, yeah.
Yes, they did. Trevor, when you look at BYU and Utah State from a distance, it's not going to make much of a national impact. But for the Aggies, what do you feel like this game means to them in the annual rivalry?
Well, it's a rivalry to start there. I mean, it's a feather in their cap to beat BYU, and that's enough. That is enough. And so that's a big deal. But keep in mind, too, that a win over BYU is their second consecutive win, and they'll be 3-2. And so they are on their way. They're out of first gear, aren't they? I mean, they got out of first gear last week at San Jose State. But if they're able to string together 2 consecutive good games and 2 consecutive wins, then that gives them their belief as well that gives them their, not just belief, but their confirmation that what they're doing is working, that they can win, that they can be successful on a regular basis. And that's a big deal for football teams. You can never underestimate the power of that kind of momentum. Faith is nice. Confirmation is better. We're not talking about church. We're talking about football. And you tend to become the team that you really think you are. And there's a self-fulfilling prophecy, without getting back into a religious reference, a self-fulfilling prophecy if things go really great for you or if they go too ugly for too long. And so, Utah State has a chance to create the positive self-fulfilling prophecy. BYU has a chance to arrest and stop the unrelenting damage of the last month by getting a win here. This is actually a very big game for both sides.
Trevor, hopefully your Redskins set the tone with a big win against Oakland. Speaking of your other team, BYU, to go up to Logan and get a win against Utah State. We appreciate the time, man.
All right, thanks, guys.